There was a time when autumn in America meant more than just changing leaves. It meant kitchens filled with warmth, the scent of spice, and recipes that told stories of family, care, and tradition. Every dish carried a memory: a grandmother's Sunday casserole, a mother's golden corn pudding, or a neighbor's gelid salad shining under the dining room light. These were not extravagant meals, but heartfelt creations that brought people together when the air turned crisp and evenings grew shorter. In today's journey through America's lost recipes, we are uncovering 14 forgotten treasures from the mid-century table, from the elegant pineapple gelid ring to the comforting ham and raisin casserole, and from the cheese and olive ring salad to the cocoa pecan buttermilk loaf that once sweetened family gatherings. Each recipe reflects a time when presentation was an art, ingredients were cherished, and every bite was a story. So join me as we rediscover the warmth of the past, where every dish had a purpose and every meal felt like home. These are not just recipes, they are chapters of America's culinary memory, waiting to be remembered once again. Autumn Harvest Corn Pudding Tamble. In the golden months of autumn, when fields shimmered with drying corn stalks and the scent of wood smoke drifted through small-town America, one humble dish captured the very heart of the season: the corn pudding tamble. It was not just a recipe, it was a ritual that celebrated harvest, family, and gratitude. Housewives in the 1930s and 1940s saved every kernel, transforming simple ingredients into something comforting, elegant, and full of warmth. This dish began with sweet, freshly shucked corn, often scraped from the cob by hand, mixed with eggs, cream, and a touch of butter. The batter was poured into small tamble molds, those delicate fluted cups that gave the pudding its regal shape. Once baked, it emerged golden and trembling, with a soft custard-like texture that melted on the tongue. The aroma alone could draw the entire family to the table. During leaner years, corn pudding was more than food. It was resourcefulness disguised as luxury. Families shared it during church suppers, barn gatherings, and harvest feasts, passing down variations that blended cornmeal, maple, or nutmeg, each telling a story of homegrown pride. Today, the corn pudding tamble reminds us that the simplest ingredients can create the deepest memories. It is a dish that carries the echo of autumn laughter, the clink of Sunday china, and the tender rhythm of American kitchens long past. So as we turn back the pages of time, remember, behind every golden tamble lies a story of care, patience, and gratitude, waiting to be savored once again. Blossom Hill Pineapple Gelid Ring. There was a time when every dinner table sparkled with color, when presentation was as important as taste, and when the art of the gelatin mold reigned supreme. Among the many creations of mid-century America, few were as elegant or as proudly displayed as the Blossom Hill Pineapple Gelid Ring. It was a dish that reflected sunshine, optimism, and the creative spirit of a nation rebuilding its joy after hard years. Made with crushed pineapple, lemon gelatin, and a touch of whipped cream, this shimmering ring was more than a dessert, it was a symbol of celebration. Housewives prepared it for church picnics, bridal luncheons, and Sunday dinners, where it stood gleaming at the center of the table, a crown of golden sweetness surrounded by sprigs of mint or slices of cherry. In those moments, it did not matter how simple the ingredients were, it was the beauty and care behind it that made it unforgettable. As the refrigerator revolution spread across American homes in the 1950s, chilled desserts like this one became a sign of progress and pride. Magazines praised their bright colors and perfect shapes, calling them modern marvels of convenience and taste. Today, the pineapple gelid ring may seem quaint, but its story carries the essence of a hopeful era, one that valued community, celebration, and the joy of creating something beautiful from the simplest pantry staples. So as we uncover this golden ring of sweetness once more, let us remember the glow it once brought to the American table, a reminder that food, when made with heart, can capture not just flavor but the feeling of an entire generation. Mid-century cheese and olive ring salad. In the polished kitchens of mid-century America, no dinner party felt complete without a gleaming ring salad resting proudly on its pedestal plate. Among these culinary marvels, the cheese and olive ring salad stood out, a daring blend of savory flavor and sculpted beauty that mirrored the creative spirit of its time. This was the era when homemakers turned simple ingredients into showpieces. Gelatin was their canvas, and imagination was their guide. The cheese and olive ring combined grated sharp cheddar, diced pimento stuffed olives, and just enough gelatin to hold it all in perfect shape. When unmolded, it shimmered with color, gold, green, and red, a mosaic of flavor meant to impress guests and prove one's mastery of modern cooking. Magazines like Better Homes and Gardens and Good Housekeeping proudly featured it in their pages, calling it a conversation centerpiece. And indeed, it was. The salty brine of olives met the creamy bite of cheese, balanced by a light, tangy dressing poured over crisp lettuce. It was bold, unusual, and undeniably mid-century. For many homemakers, this dish represented confidence, the ability to take something ordinary and make it unforgettable. It graced buffet tables at bridge clubs, holiday luncheons, and neighborhood gatherings, sparking admiration with every slice. Today, the cheese and olive ring salad stands as a time capsule of creativity, proof that mid-century cooking was not just about convenience but about presentation, pride, and the joy of experimenting. So as we bring back this savory ring of color and character, let us honor the generation that believed food could be both an art and an expression of love, crafted by hand, remembered by heart. Sunday afternoon ham and raisin casserole. There was something sacred about Sunday afternoons in mid-century America, a quiet pause between the rush of the week and the promise of another to come. Families gathered after church, sharing laughter and stories around dishes that felt both familiar and comforting. And on many of those tables, one dish stood out for its surprising sweetness and warmth, the ham and raisin casserole. This recipe traced its roots to the 1940s, when resourcefulness met creativity in the American kitchen. Leftover baked ham, sliced thin, was layered with plump raisins, a touch of brown sugar, and a tangy mustard glaze. When baked slowly, the flavors fused into something extraordinary, smoky, sweet, and slightly sharp, a flavor combination that mirrored the era's spirit of making the most of what one had. It was the kind of dish that filled a home with aroma before it even reached the table. Mothers would serve it with mashed sweet potatoes or creamed cabbage, while children waited impatiently for the golden crust to bubble at the edges. It was a meal that tasted like care, simple, balanced, and deeply satisfying. As years passed and tastes changed, this casserole quietly disappeared, replaced by quicker meals and simpler flavors. But for those who remember, it remains a symbol of patience, hospitality, and the beauty of turning leftovers into love. So as we revisit this Sunday tradition, remember that the ham and raisin casserole was never about extravagance, it was about family. A dish that turned ordinary ingredients into an extraordinary memory, one bite at a time. Golden onion and pea creamed bake. In the days when dinner meant gathering around the family table rather than rushing through a meal, there was one dish that brought color and comfort to countless American homes, the golden onion and pea creamed bake. It was simple, inexpensive, and deeply satisfying, yet it carried the grace of true home cooking. Born in the 1940s, During an era of careful budgeting and creative resourcefulness, this bake was proof that even humble vegetables could shine with the right touch. Housewives would sauté sweet yellow onions until golden and fragrant, then fold in tender green peas and a velvety cream sauce enriched with a hint of butter and nutmeg. Poured into a casserole and topped with buttery crumbs or melted cheese, it emerged from the oven bubbling and golden, filling the kitchen with warmth and anticipation. It was a side dish that could steal the spotlight, served beside roast chicken, baked ham, or even a simple loaf of bread. For many families, it symbolized comfort during uncertain times. The scent alone carried the promise of togetherness, reminding everyone that love did not require luxury. As decades passed, convenience took the place of patience, and dishes like this quietly faded from the weekly menu. Yet the golden onion and pea-creamed bake remains a reminder of what once defined the American kitchen: thrift, creativity, and care expressed through every spoonful. So when you think of this forgotten classic, remember that behind its gentle flavor lies something much deeper: the spirit of families who found joy in turning the simplest garden vegetables into moments of golden comfort. Maple glazed pork loin with apricot relish. There was a time when Sunday dinners were moments of quiet pride. When the main course was more than a meal, it was a statement of care. The maple-glazed pork loin with apricot relish was one such dish, a centerpiece of warmth, balance, and elegance that graced countless mid-century American tables. This recipe combined two beloved flavors of its era: the earthy richness of pork and the golden sweetness of maple. Housewives of the 1950s brushed their roasts with a glaze of maple syrup, brown sugar, and a touch of mustard, letting it caramelize slowly until the meat gleamed with a lacquered finish. But what made it unforgettable was the apricot relish, a bright, tangy blend of chopped apricots, vinegar, and clove that cut through the sweetness, giving the dish harmony and depth. It was often served at family gatherings or holiday dinners, where its aroma filled the home long before guests arrived. The glaze shimmered under warm kitchen light, the relish spooned carefully on top, a sign of both presentation and pride. In an era before shortcuts and prepackaged meals, dishes like this reflected patience and artistry. For many families, this meal represented celebration, a reward after a long week, a gesture of gratitude shared around the table. Today, it stands as a reminder that true comfort comes from the balance between flavor and feeling. So as we rediscover this golden roast, let us remember the kitchens where maple met apricot, where meals were made with intention, and where love always found its way to the table, one glazed slice at a time. Cocoa pecan buttermilk loaf. There was a quiet joy in the way mid-century America baked. No mixers humming, no shortcuts, just patience, aroma, and love measured by hand. The cocoa pecan buttermilk loaf was one of those timeless creations, a humble dessert that turned ordinary afternoons into something special. It was not a grand cake or a fancy pastry. It was a loaf meant for sharing, sliced thick, served warm, and always made with care. Born from the simplicity of Depression-era ingenuity and carried through the 1940s and 1950s, this loaf combined the deep comfort of cocoa with the nutty crunch of pecans, bound together by tangy buttermilk. Housewives prized buttermilk for its thrift and flavor, knowing it could make any crumb tender and rich. The result was a cake that was both hearty and delicate, lightly sweetened, soft at the center, with toasted nuts adding just the right contrast. It often appeared at potlucks, bake sales, and church gatherings, wrapped in wax paper or resting on patterned china. Sometimes it was topped with a thin cocoa glaze, other times, simply dusted with sugar. Either way, it carried the same warmth, the kind that came from a home that baked not for show, but for love. Today, the cocoa pecan buttermilk loaf reminds us of what dessert once meant, not excess, but connection. It was the taste of shared coffee, quiet conversation, and a moment's peace after long days. So as we bring this forgotten loaf back to life, remember, sweetness was never just about sugar. It was about the simple comfort of a well-loved recipe, passed down through generations, one slice at a time. Tuna Noodle Picnic Surprise Bake. There was a time when casseroles were not just convenient meals, they were tokens of care, proudly baked and carried to picnics, church suppers, and family reunions. Among those beloved dishes stood the Tuna Noodle Picnic Surprise Bake, a mid-century classic that turned simple pantry staples into a dish worthy of celebration. Born from the 1950s boom in canned goods, this recipe reflected both practicality and creativity. Housewives combined tender egg noodles, flaked tuna, cream of mushroom soup, and a touch of cheese, stirring everything together into a creamy, savory mix. The surprise came from what topped it, sometimes crushed potato chips, sometimes buttered breadcrumbs, or even cornflakes, each creating a golden, crunchy crown when baked. It was comfort food that traveled well and tasted even better the next day. Families packed it in casserole carriers lined with plaid towels, bringing it along to sunny picnics in city parks or roadside rest stops. The scent of baked noodles and toasted topping drew people together long before the first bite was served. In its own quiet way, this dish represented mid-century America, resourceful, sociable, and deeply family-centered. It turned affordable ingredients into something memorable, a dish that said, "You matter enough for me to make this from scratch." Though time has passed and recipes have grown more complex, the Tuna Noodle Picnic Surprise Bake still whispers the same truth, that the best meals are those made for others. It reminds us of folding tables, laughter in the breeze, and casseroles that brought people closer, one shared spoonful at a time. So as we rediscover this forgotten picnic favorite, we honor the heart behind it, the joy of gathering, the warmth of care, and the flavor of simpler days. Vintage tomato aspic with herb lettuce. In the elegant dining rooms of mid-century America, few dishes commanded as much attention or conversation as the tomato aspic with herb lettuce. It was bright, bold, and unlike anything served today. This was not just a salad, it was a statement of refinement and sophistication, proudly molded, chilled, and presented as the jewel of the table. The tomato aspic was made by blending seasoned tomato juice with gelatin, a touch of vinegar, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce. When poured into molds and chilled, it set into a shimmering scarlet ring that gleamed under soft dining room light. Served with crisp lettuce leaves and sometimes a dollop of mayonnaise or herb dressing, it offered a refreshing tang balanced by a silky, delicate texture. During the 1940s and 1950s, it represented modern elegance, a perfect bridge between savory and sweet, art and nourishment. Hostesses took pride in their aspics, often pairing them with cold roast beef or chicken salad at luncheons, teas, and garden parties. The dish reflected precision, patience, and an unspoken artistry that turned everyday meals into special occasions. As tastes shifted and gelatin salads fell out of favor, the tomato aspic quietly vanished from menus, remembered mostly through faded cookbooks and handwritten recipe cards. Yet its story remains a symbol of a time when food was both performance and passion, when homemakers treated even a simple salad as an expression of grace. So as we lift the lid on this ruby red relic, we rediscover a dish that captured the sophistication of its age, a reminder that beauty once sat right beside the lettuce bowl, gleaming with pride and tradition. Creamed carrot and raisin bake crowned with marshmallows. There was a time when vegetables on the dinner table were not just sides, they were opportunities for creativity, comfort, and color. The creamed carrot and raisin bake crowned with marshmallows was one of those forgotten mid-century wonders, blending sweet and savory in a way only that era could imagine. This dish began with tender carrots, boiled until soft and mashed with cream, butter, and a touch of brown sugar. Plump raisins added bursts of sweetness, their flavor deepened by baking in a silky custard base. And just before serving, the crowning touch, a layer of miniature marshmallows, was toasted to a golden glaze that shimmered under the dining room light. It was a spectacle, both humble and delightful, a dish that tasted like home and celebration all at once. In the 1940s and 1950s, recipes like this reflected a unique American optimism, a belief that even the simplest ingredients could be transformed into something joyous. Housewives served it at church suppers, holiday tables, and potlucks, where the sweet aroma drew both children and adults alike. To modern eyes, it may seem unusual, a vegetable-turned dessert, but back then, it represented comfort and imagination. It bridged the line between practicality and pleasure, a reminder that food was meant to surprise as much as it satisfied. Today, the creamed carrot and raisin bake stands as a symbol of that cheerful creativity. It invites us to remember when cooking was personal, colorful, and full of heart, a time when even a humble carrot could glow with the warmth of homemade love. Broiled ham and cheese waffle casserole. There was a golden age in American kitchens when breakfast met supper in the most unexpected ways. The broiled ham and cheese waffle casserole was one such mid-century marvel, a dish that turned morning comfort into an evening delight. It was creative, hearty, and proudly indulgent, the kind of meal families looked forward to after long days or lazy Sunday afternoons. This casserole began with crisp waffles, often left over from breakfast, stacked in buttery layers like a cozy quilt. Between them came slices of smoky ham, sharp cheese, and a rich cream sauce poured slowly until everything was blanketed in warmth. Once broiled, the top bubbled to a golden crust, the cheese melted, the edges crisped, and the scent filled the air with pure anticipation. It was a recipe born in the 1950s, when convenience met imagination. Frozen waffles had just entered American homes, and homemakers found new ways to turn them into something remarkable. For many, this casserole represented the joy of innovation, taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary, one creative layer at a time. Families gathered around it with steaming mugs of coffee or cold glasses of milk, the meal feeling both familiar and festive. It carried the laughter of children, the comfort of home, and the warmth of shared tradition. Today, the broiled ham and cheese waffle casserole reminds us that even the simplest ingredients can create a memory worth keeping. It is a dish that celebrates ingenuity, nostalgia, and the sweet truth that the best meals are the ones shared, golden, cheesy, and made with love. Peppery beef and bean hot dish skillet. In the heart of America's Midwest, where winters were long and evenings cold, comfort was found in one simple word, hot dish. And among the many variations that warmed small-town kitchens, few were as hearty or beloved as the peppery beef and bean hot dish skillet. It was a one-pan miracle that carried both flavor and family in every bite. This dish was born in the 1930s, when practicality ruled the American table. Ground beef, kidney beans, and diced onions formed the base, seasoned with black pepper, tomato sauce, and a dash of Worcestershire for depth. Everything simmered slowly in a cast-iron skillet until thick, fragrant, and bubbling. Sometimes it was finished with mashed potatoes or a layer of biscuit dough, other times, simply topped with shredded cheese that melted into a savory crust. For working families, the hot dish was more than dinner, it was security. It stretched ingredients through the week, fed large families on tight budgets, and filled homes with the aroma of something wholesome and steady. Mothers called it supper in a skillet, and everyone knew exactly what that meant: warmth, flavor, and a table full of content faces. The peppery beef and bean hot dish captured the spirit of its region, resourceful, comforting, and deeply rooted in community. It was the meal you brought to neighbors, the dish that greeted tired fathers, and the taste that made children feel safe. Today, it remains a reminder of that unshakable Midwestern heart, proof that a little beef, a few beans, and a cast-iron skillet could feed more than hunger. It could feed the soul. Orange chiffon cake, 1948. There was a time in post-war America when people wanted desserts that felt light, airy, and filled with new beginnings. Out of that hope came the orange chiffon cake, a dessert so revolutionary that Betty Crocker proudly called it the first new cake in 100 years. Introduced in 1948, it captured the spirit of a country rediscovering comfort after years of war and sacrifice. Unlike the heavy butter cakes of earlier decades, this one used vegetable oil, creating a delicate, tender crumb that stayed soft for days. Each slice carried the uplifting scent of fresh orange, bright, fragrant, and joyful, a reflection of optimism baked right into every bite. The story began with a Los Angeles insurance salesman who secretly perfected the recipe and guarded it for 2 decades. When he finally sold it to General Mills, the chiffon craze swept across the nation. Home bakers whisked egg whites until glossy, folded them with care, and poured the golden batter into tall tube pans. What emerged from the oven was a masterpiece, a cake that seemed to float, light as air, with the glow of sunlight trapped within its layers. The orange chiffon cake symbolized progress and innovation, proof that even something as simple as dessert could represent a changing America. Families served it at weddings, holidays, and summer picnics, celebrating not just flavor, but freedom and creativity. If this golden slice of America's past made you smile, subscribe to America's Lost Recipes. Together, we will continue uncovering the forgotten desserts that once filled kitchens with love, warmth, and the taste of hope. Spinach mushroom quiche ring with cheddar crust, 1964. In the 1960s, American home cooking began to evolve, taking inspiration from Europe while still holding on to familiar comforts. The spinach mushroom quiche ring with cheddar crust perfectly captured that shift, a dish that blended elegance with practicality. It was a time when entertaining at home was an art form, and presentation was everything. The ring mold, once used for desserts, found new purpose in savory dishes like this one, where vibrant spinach and earthy mushrooms met the sharp richness of aged cheddar. The quiche ring reflected mid-century innovation, convenience without compromise. Housewives whisked eggs and cream with the precision of chefs, sautéed mushrooms in butter, and folded in spinach until the kitchen filled with a deep, nutty aroma. The cheddar crust, golden and flaky, held it all together, crisp on the outside, tender within. Served warm, each slice offered layers of flavor that felt both homey and sophisticated. It was often the centerpiece of Sunday brunches, garden luncheons, and holiday gatherings, a proud sign that the hostess knew both flavor and flair. Beyond taste, this dish symbolized an era when women explored global flavors yet honored tradition. The quiche ring was a culinary bridge between France's refined quiches and America's creative spirit, a celebration of ingenuity, not imitation. Today, the spinach mushroom quiche ring with cheddar crust stands as a forgotten gem of mid-century entertaining, reminding us of a time when even vegetables could feel luxurious. If this golden quiche ring stirred a memory of warm kitchens and family laughter, subscribe to America's Lost Recipes. Let us continue reviving the dishes that turned everyday meals into timeless memories of comfort, care, and creativity.